All right, John, we're looking at a picture of, who are we looking at a picture of here?
That's my grandfather, Nick Kuntz, and grandmother, Pauline Geiger Kuntz.
And what do you remember about your grandparents?
Not just too much. I mean, he was kind of a happy-go-lucky. Took care of his family. I mean, that was his main objective, I guess.
And where did he come from?
Where he would have came. I wouldn't know where.
Did he come from Russia?
Yeah, he
did.
Yes.
And what made him decide to settle in North Dakota?
I don't know. I suppose that's because everybody else was doing it. I suppose they kind of the unrest over there in Russia that they decided to come over and see what's in this new country.
And what was unique about this grandpa?
Well, he raised a lot of sheep, and outside of that, I don't know. He was just an everyday grandpa, I think, to me, because I didn't see him just too often.
How old were you when he passed away?
11.
And did he live close?
No, he lives in south of Richardson, north of Mott, in the St. Stephen's community.
So how often were you able to see him?
Lucky to be once a year.
And how did your grandfather die?
I could not say for sure.
And what about your grandmother?
She died a young mother. She had her fourth child, and she died from complications of childbirth.
And we have another photo here of your grandfather. Who else is in this photo?
That was his grandfather's second wife, Joanna Baseluk Kuntz.
And what do you remember about this grandmother?
I didn't know much at all about her because she passed away too before I got to know him really.
And do you know, did she have any children before she died?
Yes, she had, let's see, she had 5 boys.
And so this made how many children for your grandfather?
Well, that would have been 9 at that, when he was widowed after she passed away.
Do you know how he dealt with raising 9 children on his own?
I never did find out. I mean, I just suppose he did what he had to do, I imagine. Then.
Did your father ever talk about it? Or your mother?
My father or mother?
Mother.
Not too much. I mean, she didn't. She'd mention it, but then he was. Then she was getting old enough that, my mother took care of that little baby from the first marriage. Even she was acted as her mother, and she had to take care of her. Plus,
Was your mother the oldest?
no, she had an older brother.
So how old was she when that happened? When her stepmother passed away? Do you know?
Don't tell me when he married the third time, because he wasn't a widower just too long, probably 8-10 months after she passed away.
And then we have your grandfather one more time. Who is he with in this photo?
That's a third wife. Her name was Josephine Wettstein. And she was a widow. She had 2 children from a previous marriage. Her husband had passed away.
And do you remember her pretty well?
I knew, yeah, I had pretty good, knew her pretty well. And her sister, younger sister, married my mother's older brother, John. So they were, it's kind of a relationship between them. But she had there were 7 children born
After they married?
with this marriage.
Okay. So that gave them how many children total?
7, 5, 12, 16. Had to be, maybe this was 8. Yeah, there were 8, yep, because there were 17 in the family.
Did your mother ever talk about what it was like being raised with such a large family?
She did mention how much work it was.
Did she mention how many chores she had in addition?
Not that much, but I'm sure there was enough housework there that had to be done besides.
Do you know if she ever helped out in the fields at all, or was she usually in
She did help in the field.
Anything else? Okay.
I know at one point she had a big gash in the side of her leg, and she had been out there with her brother, and they were disking. And she fell off, and the disc ran over her and put that big gash in the side of her leg. So I know she was out there helping too.
Did she ever talk about it a whole lot?
Some, but just that it happened.
And did you know your aunts and uncles pretty well?
To some extent, yeah. They were, I knew who they were. We'd get together if there was a wedding or something, but most of them were, some were locally, some moved to the West Coast, some moved to Minneapolis. So you didn't get to see them too often.
Now, did any of your aunts and uncles live close, that you were able to see them frequently?
Not on mother's side. No, the closest was, there was one in Dickinson. And the other one was about 35 miles northeast of Dickinson. And all the rest were further away.
Did any of them ever return?
Not really, no.
Now, this photo is also your grandparents?
Yeah, that's my dad's father and mother, Anton and Margaret Stoutinger Urlacher.
And what do you remember about your grandfather?
Oh, he was kind of a earnest person. I mean, he wasn't that he was stern or anything that he was, but he kind of stuck to business. I mean, he didn't. Once in a while, he'd crack a joke though too, and he was.
Do you have what is your fondest memory of him?
I don't know. Maybe the way he could twitch his mustache. Whenever there was a kind of a joke, you know, he could twist the mustache and have a kind of a peculiar grin on his face.
And what about your grandmother? What was she like?
She was just a normal grandmother, I think, and she did quite a bit of crocheting, and she was pretty much, you know, wherever you seen her, she was wearing a long dress and an apron, and everything. She was not complete without her apron.
Was she typical German Russian
Yes,
in the way she dressed?
yep, pretty.
What about the food
She had a, whatchamacallit, on the back of her, bob, what do you call it when they put a,
Ponytail?
no, bob, what do you call them? Twist the hair into a ball.
Bun?
Bun. Yeah, that's what she wore.
All the time?
Yep.
And did your grandmother ever speak English?
No, not really, no.
Were you able to communicate with her?
Oh, well, yeah, we could talk a little German, enough to get by with, but she didn't. Grandpa did a little more than she did.
And would you see your Urlacher grandparents very often?
Oh, quite often, yeah. They were.
Did they live fairly close?
Well, when they lived out in the country, they were 2.5 miles from us, and then they moved into New England, so that made them. So we'd stop there after church for a while and visit with them.
Would your grandmother, did she make any of the traditional German Russian dishes?
Yeah, she did have some.
Any that you remember distinctly?
More or less just the common ones that I know. I can't say offhand any particular one that stuck in my mind. Oh, she did make a twist, cinnamon type of a twist. They call it like a bird, it looked like a bird tail and a bird's head, and that's the way they rolled that bun. It was a cinnamon bun that was pretty good.
And how, did they visit your house very often?
Not too often. Grandpa did. He'd come out and come walking even to the farm and stuff, but she pretty much stayed to the house because she had trouble getting around.
And how did your grandmother pass away?
I think she had a heart problem, and so did Grandpa then after.
And where are they buried?
Buried in New England, St. Mary's Cemetery.
Anything else you'd like to add about your grandparents?
I don't know, offhand.
Now this looks like a rambunctious group here. Who is this in this photo? Can you tell me from this side?
Well, those are all some of my mother's stepbrothers. And the one right here on the top by the steering wheel, the second one, that's me.
And what were you doing?
I guess just posing for a picture.
It looks like you're out in a field. Were you
No,
perhaps working?
I think that was in the yard that
In
he maybe had just got that tractor and they figured they'd get on the picture with that tractor.
Who took the picture?
I don't know.
Um,
Maybe my mother did. I would say there's a chance it was.
Now, did these uncles come over and see the family?
Not to see us or see the family. Well, they were home and then they went to join the CCs, and then they went to the World War II at a young age because there was no outlook, as on the farm, so they went out to make a living.
And how many of these uncles did go to World War II?
3, 4 of them.
Did they all come back?
Yeah.
Did they ever talk about their experiences?
Not too much, They came back from the service. One settled north of Dickinson, and the other 3 settled in Minneapolis, St. Paul, I guess to say it. That's where they settled. Married and had a family, and that's why.
Did you ever learn anything from them that you can remember?
Well, I don't know. This one, I think back here, he was a hard worker. He worked and he was eventually killed. He got pinned under a tractor making hay. And then one is still alive. Two of them on that picture, they made a good living in Minneapolis, St. Paul as carpenters. They actually all three were carpenters, but the one, he kind of got himself in an alcohol problem. And that changed his life for him. The wife left him, and from then on he was...
So they didn't all stay on the farm then?
No. When they quit, he rented the farm to a nephew. He had a brother. My grandpa had a brother living about a better than a half a mile away, and he had one son, so they rented the land to him, and then he stayed there until he retired. He passed away a couple of years back.
Anything else about this picture you'd like to add?
I don't think so.
Now this picture, it looks like we have a group of people traveling somewhere. What are they doing?
No, I think Mom's folks, they were up for a visit. Or else folks were down there, but anyhow, that's my oldest sister, Irene, that she's holding there.
So that's your mother and your father and your
Yes.
mom's parents?
Yes.
And did they come down and visit like that often, since they lived at
I guess say
distance?
once a year or so.
And was this out at the farm?
Yeah. Either at our farm or at theirs. It was at one of the places.
And how old were you when your sister Irene was about that age?
Well, I must have been, she was about 1, so I was close to 6.
And were you not in this general area, or do you know where you were?
I suppose I was off with with the rest of them playing or something, because I didn't get on the picture.
And were your parents dressed in their normal outfits, or was this an unusual?
It was like a Sunday outfit.
And your grandparents?
I suppose to, yeah, that was pretty much.
Anything else about this photo you'd like to?
I'd say that's a good chance it was taken at Grandpa's house, because he's not dressed up and Dad's wearing a suit.
So in this case, it would be your parents are visiting your grandparents?
Yep.
And this looks like a soldier here.
Yep.
Who is this?
I think he was, I think he came from Indiana or Illinois. He came up, he was first grade teacher at the country school, and his name was Urlacher. And then after he was drafted World War II, and he died in the invasion of Sicily.
And what do you remember about Earl?
Oh, he was a real good guy, but everybody hated when they heard about his passing. They expected him to come back sometime and be a teacher again, but it didn't happen.
Do you know how old he was when he was drafted?
Probably 21 at the most, or thereabouts.
And how long did he teach in country school before then?
That was his first teaching experience.
Did he do anything interesting in the classroom that you can remember?
Well, I don't know. I mean, as a first grade kid, you don't know what to expect. Or
Well, what did you like about school when you were that age?
oh, it was education. I mean, I always did like school.
Did you have a lot of friends at school?
Yep, there were.
Any that you can name?
Oh yeah, there was James Paul, Charles Height, and, well, there were several Heights, and then there was Albinus Stockard, and Emmett and Franklin Ott. They were all about my age.
And what was your favorite school activity?
As far as recess or otherwise?
Inside or outside? Doesn't matter.
I don't know, inside, I don't know. There was no special one, but we always looked forward to it when we could play Box and a Goose or Andy I over at recess, that we could pass the time. Recess went a lot quicker.
And how long was recess? Do you remember?
Usually, well, I think we got about 40 minutes for noon hour.
And that was lunch included?
Yes.
And what did you usually eat for lunch?
Oh, the most sandwiches, quite a few jelly sandwiches, and peanut butter, and once in a while, there was a minced ham in the sandwich, but not too often because you couldn't be too warm at that time because you didn't have any insulated lunch boxes, and then apples or oranges, something like that.
Well, what's your favorite memory from school?
I don't know, nothing really stands out right now.
What is this a photo of?
That was the entrance to the Theodore Roosevelt Park. That was the original entrance.
And did you take a trip there?
Yeah, they took a one-day trip, I suppose, out there.
Who was it that took the trip?
That was my folks and family.
Were you not at that trip?
Yep, I was on that.
And that looks like an interesting car there. Was that?
Yeah, that was one of the first ones that came back after World War II. That was a 1942 Chevrolet when cars became available again.
And was that a luxury?
Well, it was a kind of a middle of the line, like where Chevrolet is yet today.
And what was it like going on road trips?
Well, it was interesting because he didn't go on too many of them.
Can you describe what it was like going to Theodore Roosevelt National Park?
I was so far back because I was only 10 or so at the time.
And is this entrance still there today?
I don't know if it is. If it is, it's way back in the distance. If part of it is left or not. Part of it, there were two parts to that, and one part they brought up to the other entrance. But I think this here part they left because it was not to be moved.
Well, is there anything about this you'd like to add?
Not really.
Okay. And this looks like a family photo. Is this your family?
Yeah, that was taken in the, what did I say, they're the smallest one. That must have been taken about 1944. Oh, 43 it says, yeah.
And who are the girls? Can you name them for me?
Are there 3 girls?
Mhm.
Yeah, then it's Irene, Betty Jane, and Luella. Oh yeah, here she is, right in front.
And do you remember, what was this on a Sunday or?
Yeah, good chance. That was still taken out at the farm down south of New England.
And what was it like being raised with 3 sisters?
Just had to do it. That was the way life was. You just make the best of it. I mean, it was no problems.
Did they ever look to you as the older brother?
Well, I always liked to push me because I was older to do some of the more of the jobs.
Yeah, because you were the only son? Do you feel like you had more responsibility than they
That's
did?
what they, yeah.
Did you ever resent that?
Not really, no.
And what were your sisters like? Can you tell me what Irene was like?
Right now,
When she was younger?
well, she was, I don't know just how you describe her. She was kind of, she took an interest in cooking and sewing and stuff like that because she turned into be a good baker, good housekeeper.
And what about Betty Jane?
Now she worked at what they call the Woolworth store for many, many years until the F.W. Woolworth closed up, and she liked to do that retail work.
Is that what she would do when she was about high school age, or?
Yep, that's where they started when they got out of high school. Irene started by working in it was a Red Owl store, which is a grocery store in New England, and so she was a clerk there. And Luella, why she went with Betty too, but can't remember where she worked. I know they both went to Dickinson together and had a room together, but I'm trying to think what she did. Don't come to me now what her first jobs are. But Betty and Luella both live here in Dickinson, but Irene is in a nursing home in Bismarck for several years, a result of a car accident.
And how close are your sisters?
Oh, we see them pretty regular.
Now this is also a picture of the
Yep,
family.
that
Is this
was
a little bit
that
later?
was that was a later.
Okay, and then which sister is this?
That's Irene right here.
And in the front?
Betty in the center, and Luella.
And was this in a studio?
Yep, I would say that's a studio picture.
Do you know where you would have to go to get a studio picture?
Well, that was here in Dickinson, but that studio is closed up for years.
Now, your parents look like they're having a fairly good time in this picture. They're kind of smiling. Were they happy people?
Well, no, they were. Got along good and everything.
And what kind of a man was your father?
Dad, he was easy going. I mean, he was a hard worker, but he never, I don't know if you could count on one hand probably in his life with the cuss words he had for anything. He was.
Who were you closer to, your mother or your father?
Well, I was closer to Dad because I worked with him side by side on the farm.
And what do you remember the most about your dad?
Well, the worst one that bothered me was for about 7 years he was wheelchair ridden, and so I pushed a wheelchair wherever he wanted to be taken to and everything, and it didn't bother me.
And how old was he when he needed to be in a wheelchair?
About 75.
And by then, did he live here in town?
No, he lived in New England, and then they then Mom went to a nursing home, and then later he had to too because he couldn't. He needed to care. So he was there for about 5 years. But whenever he wanted to go to church or any weddings or funerals or whatever, I always saw to it that he got there. I think he appreciated that.
And what about your mother?
She was kind of easygoing, but she seemed a little more controlling than he was. I mean, she was the mother, and you listened to Mother.
So she was the boss at home.
Yep, she did.
What's your fondest memory of your mother?
I don't know, maybe her cooking, because she was an excellent cook.
What was your favorite meal?
I really didn't have, I just ate anything. I didn't have any, I don't know which one I'd pick out that
Nothing that stands out?
nothing really.
Was there anything else you'd like to add about this?
I don't think so.
Now, which house is this?
That was a winter scene at a house on a farm 2 miles north of New England.
What do you remember about that winter?
That was a tough winter. That was 49. That was when winter about like our past one here.
And how would your family cope during the long winters?
Just did it.
And what can you tell us about this house? What do you remember about it? What did the inside of it look like?
Well, it was plastered and, but I mean, it was divided like in the beginning, like a living room here and a dining area and then the kitchen. And then this was an entry out in front. And then there were 3 bedrooms along the back side. And the upstairs wasn't made out. It was still just...
Was it an attic?
Just the attic, you know. We saw the rafters and everything. And then later on, when the girls got older, then they made it out. The girls moved upstairs.
And how long did it take them to finish the upstairs?
And I think that was a winter project that one year. It could have been probably 52, winter of 52 going to 53.
Anything else you'd like to add about this one?
Not really.
This looks like you with your sisters?
Yep, must have been in the summer of 1949, taken in a little flower garden in front of the house.
And can you tell me the girls from left to right?
Well, it's Irene, Betty, and Luella, according to age.
And were you often lined up like this for photographs?
Yep, I suppose that's how we were lined up. That's the way
Were they usually on Sundays?
Yep, usually.
And what was a typical Sunday like at home?
Well, usually there was, most of the time I either probably went somewhere after or invited out for Sunday dinner, or somebody came, or there usually was something going on.
Did your mother make anything specific on a Sunday afternoon?
Well, they always, most of the time, they made chicken noodle soup. That was one of the main things. Sunday dinner wasn't complete without it.
Were there seating arrangements at the family table?
Yeah, there was enough seating.
Did you always sit in the same spot?
If not, well, pretty much, but if not, why, if there were more, then most of the time the adults ate first, then the kids ate after.
Were you always supposed to eat everything on your plate?
Well, pretty much. I mean, it taught to take as much as you can eat, and that was.
What was a typical Sunday at church like?
Just going to church, and most of the time it was about 10 o'clock Mass.
And would you do any activities in the afternoon?
Yeah, there was always something maybe that. We had some neighbors that lived off to the west, and they had a large family. We'd get together with them too and have a ball game or something.
And how long would the ball games usually?
Till we got tired of playing, or somebody got disappointed what was going on and left, and that broke up the game.
Was that ever you?
No, usually was somebody else that thought they should have get 4 strikes or whatever, and no, can't do that. Stuff like that, just like kids are.
Any other games that you would play on a Sunday afternoon besides baseball?
Well, we did a lot of sledding in the winter.
Were there a lot of hills out of the
Well, there
farm?
was a hill behind. There was a good hill to come down on, and
In this photo, it looks like certainly a family photo. What is
that's a
special about this?
4-generation picture of.
And who is it in the back?
That's my dad on the left, grandfather Anton next, and I was in the back row,
Okay.
and oldest son David was in front of me.
And when was this taken?
1954, I think, or 57.
How long before this was before your grandfather passed away?
Grandfather, he passed away in 60. So it was 3 years. I think that's a 7.
1957.
Yep, so I was 3 years about.
And what was special about this day? It looks like you're wearing a corsage
It's
or boutonniere.
That was my folks' 25th wedding anniversary. No, no, that wasn't. Dave wouldn't be that old on. Maybe it was somebody else's doing, so we just got together, because in 57, well, Dave was born in 54, so I don't know. He looks more than 3 on there. Maybe he isn't. Maybe that was it.
25th?
Oh, that was my sister's wedding. February 19th, 57. That's what it was.
Which sisters?
Irene.
Anything else you'd like to add about that?
No, that should do it.
John, what is special about this this picture?
That's my mom and dad's marriage certificate.
And when were they
They call
married?
it
November 10th, 1931?
November 10th of 1931.
Do you remember anything about their wedding? Have they mentioned anything?
Not too much. Just that it was cold.
And did your parents have any pictures of their wedding? Do you know?
Not that I got to see any. I haven't. And I think there weren't at that time. There mustn't have been much of any wedding picture, because nobody has anything.
And where were they married?
At St. Stephen's Church, which is rural Richardson.
Anything else about that you'd like to add? Was this a typical certificate
Yep,
for
that's it.
those days?
Yep.
John, what is this?
That's my dad. Dominic's First Communion certificate.
And what kind of at what age do they usually do the first communion?
What age did they? I can't make it out. What age? But it was usually. Well, it was 1920. So he was what? 11.
11 April.
Yep.
And do you know where he had his first communion?
Who had it?
Where he had it?
Oh, that was at St. Pius Church in Sheffield.
And where is Sheffield?
We passed it. I should have called it to your attention. We were going out, about halfway out, there's a sign that said St. Pius. So it was 3 miles up the road.
So how many miles from New England was it?
Well, there was about 11. But at that time, they went to Sheffield. There was a school there, and they got instructions and so forth. And that was why it was there and not in New England. Because